Okay, I'll call this June 11 meeting of the Muncie Ethics Commission to order. We'll start with the roll call.
Chip Taylor,
Here.
Susan Dillon,
Here.
Sandra Whitaker,
Here.
and Jim Lowe. I am here.
Okay. You had in your packet a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay. Any amendments or corrections? Otherwise, everybody in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have no old business. That's a first. Under new business, the first item is discussion of a draft electronic meetings policy. Like I mentioned in the email, when I sent this out, Susan and I were talking about some other things related to business. She mentioned whether or not we needed one of these, and my first reaction was there's a state law that covers this, and I'm sure that's what governs. And then when I got to looking at that, my reading of it, I'm not an attorney, so I'll let a real attorney tell us if I read that right, but it said we were supposed to have a policy on this. Is that correct, Mr. Wisely?
Is that the IC 514 you're referring to? The top there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you, so you have to adopt one, and then it just has to be in line. with
Has to be
us.
compliant with the state law. So what I did on this one, I took, the city council's got one that's in city code. Adapted that, I mean, as far as, sort of the requirements and the exceptions and stuff, it's all like that. I guess the part that is the, I can find it. Yeah, so then in section Roman numeral 2G, one restriction, it says that none of us can participate electronically if we're actually holding a public hearing, like on a complaint. And I thought that was, I know the one that covers city councils, it's like there are things, if they're setting tax rates and there's certain little list of things that they're doing that like you know, if a council member is gonna participate, they've gotta be there. And I felt like, for us, that having one of those hearings, it would be really hard for a commissioner to participate in that, hear witnesses and stuff, they weren't here. So, otherwise, this is basically just, basically a cut and paste with some, language change where needed, from the city council, policy. I guess, Alan, is there anything like that we should address that's not addressed in there, or?
In this, no, I looked over this and, this all looks good. It's in line with, the statute.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or
But I
comments?
was wondering, I'm thinking about our school board meetings, we actually at some point in time, and in Ball State meetings, we could see the person. They're attending and we see them on a screen. How do you do this electronically? How do you hear me if I'm gone and I'm attending? How do you voice in? Is there some electronics in here that allows us to do that?
I guess there's a couple, of course, what I've seen the city council do, basically, there's like somebody on the phone and they set the phone up to the
Oh,
microphone.
kind of clunky though.
It wasn't all that bad, I didn't think, depends. It
Yeah.
was clear the night that
Okay.
I heard it.
Yeah, I guess I've seen it a couple of different times. It works, it's worked better sometimes than it has others. I mean, another thing I think that could be, I think is possible is something like that. I mean, somebody could bring a laptop, you know, the zoom in or something. I don't know if there's, a way to like patch the audio of the laptop into the thing so that,
Yeah, you could eventually do that as well as have it set up so that whoever's on Zoom will be on the TV.
On
I
the
would
Yeah.
think so.
I think that would be, you know,
Good.
the best thing, but I mean, I've seen him do it as simple as just like having the phone, and I think what I observe, a lot of that depends on like how good a connection the person's got wherever they're at, because then like if the phone call drops out, it's hard to tell like when they were participating and stuff, which is,
Who would set up the Zoom meeting invite? Would that be
I assume that would be up to the chair
the chair?
to
Okay.
get it, you know, worked out
Good.
somehow.
Just-
I don't know all the details of setting it up with the TV, but I know sometimes city council will have people with PowerPoint. and stuff
Yeah.
like that, so I know it's doable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the main thing, if somebody needed to attend electronically, like to know as far ahead of time as possible, so we could get with Mark and, you know, make sure that everything's set up, but, hopefully, since we mostly just meet once a month, won't, but,
Yeah.
you know, you never know. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, well, we'll put that on the old business for action next month and get the policy in place. The other item for discussion, so, of course, you know, one of the things in the ordinance that, in fact, I think it's the very last thing in the ordinance essentially, is issue this transparency portal. And when the committee was meeting, you know, there was a thought that like, it would be helpful to have, less ethics-related stuff in one place on the website. I've been talking to Belinda and Lacey on this off and on, and I want to take this opportunity, I'd like for the minutes to reflect, the city clerk's office could not have been more helpful than they've been through this. We've had to get some procedures, we got the procedures set up for taking complaints, which we got to try out in the last month. Talking about our records, you know, posting our meeting notices, just everything, is very helpful, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you before, but I want to thank you now, maybe when people are watching. That goes all the way back to when the advisory committee was meeting. They were very helpful with getting us on the website then. I thought it would be helpful to sort of go down the list of items that are called for and kind of where we're at, you know, as far as like being able to get those online. And then the last one has to do with this purchasing information. Maybe we can have a little more discussion on that. So, ordinance calls for the transparency portal to have the code of ethics. And of course, that's on our web page already. Where people can access that. The second one is a list of Ethics Commission members, and that's already on the main page. That mentions conflict of interest forms, and there's sort of three versions. There's the disclosure for, you know, the city contracting with a relative. We recently adopted that form. And so, you know, if anybody submits one of those disclosures, then, you know, we can put that in this section of the website, of the portal. The other two had to do with kind of the more routine, you know, conflict of interest form, you know, conflict of interest in contracts and the conflict of interest in decisions. And I've been in contact with Patty Goddard, HR director. And let me just acknowledge too, Patty has been great to work with, on the things where we've sort of intersected with what she's up to. As some of you may know, she just, in the last month, there was an email went out to all employees, all the board and commission members, and everybody, so to respond to this form, and it did two things. One, you know, it provided the video training that covers the ethics covers the ethics code, a pretty high level, but it lets you know the things to look out for. And then we had to respond to this form and one, verify that we'd received the training. And so that the training records are another item down here. She also had people, I guess, kind of proactively fill out the information that would be in that standard conflict of interest form. Now, like in my case, I filled it out. It said, I don't even have a job right now, so it's harder for me to have a conflict of interest. But filled out that like I had none at this time, and if for some reason one arose, I'd fill it out again. So I had corresponded with her, and she, since the training verification and the conflict of interest come out of the same form, she's generated a report and sent. I think you and Lacey were copied on that. I'm not sure. It's
I've got one of the email threads here just to.
yeah. So anyway, it's a spreadsheet that's got like all the responses to those two. So anyway, I want to thank her for putting that together. Her plan is that we talked about quarterly would be about right, since we're right here, kind of the second quarter. So she's going to rerun that report quarterly. It'll always go back to the first of the year, so that it'll be cumulative. Like if they hire new employees or people that didn't get the training before the last time the report was run, and so we'll be able to put those in the appropriate spot on there. There are advisory opinions issued by the Ethics Commission. If anyone ever requests one and we issue one, then we'll be able to put them up there. And then item 5, it talks about public documents related to complaints filed with the Ethics Commission. And so for the most part, like these complaints we dealt with last month, when we acted on them, there's it's one page front and back that documents the decision we made on that. I can get with Lacey. That would be what would be, posted in the case of these ones that we've acted on. If you ever had a complaint that like got further in the process or whatever, there would eventually be more stuff. But there'd certainly be one of those every time that we took an action on it. So that would go up there. Item 6, annual reports of the Ethics Commission. Of course, we'll do one of those reports when we get the end of our first year here, and that will go up there. Item 7 is the documentation verifying compliance with the training requirements. And again, Patty did that, and she told me that what she did for people that had, they'd started out doing the training in person, and then switched to that I think, if I understood what she told me correctly, she took everybody that was already, that she had sort of a paper record that they'd taken it and entered the information. So that's complete and in there. And that brings us to the last one, which will be potentially the most volume of documents, I'm sure, and that has to do with public documents related to purchases of $5,000 or more. And so I put together just kind of summary of some stuff. It's a combination of, we'd sort of looked at the purchasing ordinance when we were writing that part of the ordinance. Jim and I have met and discussed this. I think he got some additional information from Gretchen Cheeseman about some of the HUD, contracting and stuff. And what, and so basically, I think there are about 4 main methods that it appears that are used to do purchases. There may be some others, but for like low value things, they just obtain prices from suppliers. I know I worked in local government. We did a lot of smaller purchases that way. We'd get three prices. I mean, if you're buying kind of standard stuff. And so I think what would need to be gathered and put up on the transparency portal would be the description of what was purchased, information about each supplier each supplier that provided a price, and then the prices, and then a list, just note who was chosen, and if it wasn't the lowest price, there's supposed to be some justification why. And that basically comes out of the purchasing ordinance. That's what we tried to do, is not request any documentation that wasn't already being, created. Then there's the invitation to quote, which I guess is a little more formal than that. They send out an invitation to quote. There's a list of suppliers that are invited, copies of all the quotes, and then a copy of the contract executed with the selected supplier. And again, I think that comes out of the purchasing ordinance. And there are different value cutoffs depending on whether it's public works or non-public works. But for our purposes, we're mainly just concerned with like how the purchase was done. That dictates the. And then there's competitive bidding, for really large things. And so in this case, the documentation would be a copy of the public notice or invitation to bid, a copy of plans and specifications if applicable, copy of all the bids received, a copy of the contract executed with the selected bidder. And then there are some provisions if somebody other than the lowest bidder was selected, there's supposed to be a justification. And if there are any permitted changes to the bid requirements, there's supposed to be some written documentation on that. And then sort of the fourth thing is a request for proposals. I'm guessing, when I work with this is more like if you're hired, a lot of times more like hiring services, like if you're hiring an engineering firm or a consultant or that sort of thing. A copy of the request for proposals, a list of everybody that received the request, list of all the proposals received, which includes, name, dollar amount, name of successful offer, dollar amount, basis on which the award was made, and then, because basically there's a contract file that they're supposed to keep. May have some proprietary information withheld, but other than that, that's what we're looking for. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I thought of while going over this is, once you have, a finalized version of this, I would get with the main department heads who are sending out stuff for contracts a lot to make sure that they can let their contractors know. In theory, the contractors should all know that those bids are public documents, but there's a difference in putting together a document that's gonna go in a drawer somewhere and the public could
Right.
see that they requested it versus a document that's gonna go online. So just making sure that your contractors also know that.
Okay,
Because obviously a lot of the contractors aren't gonna know the ins and outs of the, once you code of ordinance.
Okay.
Things are gonna be looking at the laws.
do you think there will be any issue with putting, if we work back to the first of the year,
What I would do is just, any of those contracts that you're gonna put on, I would recommend reaching out to those, whether or not they got the contract, reaching out to those people, letting them know, hey, these documents are now going online pursuant to this ordinance. If there's something in there you think shouldn't be online, please let us know.
okay. All right,
Just because I think of some departments, like especially, like the building commissioner's office with the departments, they issue a lot of contracts.
yeah,
And so just making, obviously they're mostly with the same handful of contractors, the way most of
Okay.
these things work.
Okay.
And most of that information is in that Form 96, right, where they check the box and they fill in, so
Okay.
it's pretty standard.
okay. Well, so that brings me, so that's we'll coordinate that with the city attorney's office, make sure that, the request and that the departments have the information they need. Because our thought was, there's, at this point, we've got, close to 6 months worth of the years already happened. Start with the contracts and then work our way down to the, because, we recognize that, like, you know, they've got jobs that they do all day, so we're not expecting them to kind of drop what they're doing and get all this documentation at one time. We just kind of like prioritize it, start with, start getting caught up and then stay up. Of course, this is where you end up on the other, your office ends up on the other end of this. I'm assuming if they already have it in electronic form, you'd prefer to get it that way. Is that,
Whatever's easiest, I mean, like I said, if there's already something generated, it's easier to upload.
yeah, okay. That's, I mean, I don't know how they keep their records, so I don't know if, like, if it's already, you know, if they've kept it electronically or if it's the paper forms, but, you know, we're trying to not get everything that might be in the file, but just like the basics, right? Just kind of show the decision that was made. And so, I mean, that would be part of, I think what we want to communicate to them is that, you know, that the documents, you know, go to the city clerk's office, electronically if it's already that way, or otherwise, however it's easier for them to send it, I guess.
And the hard copies we can scan and upload.
Yeah.
Either way, just however.
Okay, and, yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, there'll be, yeah, because you'll create another folder in the document section where we've got there, and there'd be like one PDF for each, you know, for each purchase, like that's, and maybe that's something I can talk to you and,
Depending on where the purchases come from, I mean, with the board works be something that, most of their contracts are over $5,000, a lot of small ones.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a bunch of different ways that contracts are coming in though.
Yeah.
And I have experience with in the community development department, which is going to be the one that's a problem, just because their contract requirements are so different from everyone else's.
Yeah.
And they have different ways that they do things. But I know at least a lot of theirs is already electronically submitted.
Yeah.
which should be helpful.
well, and, I know, Jim had reached out to Gretchen. She sent a spreadsheet that she'd put together sometime back, and it looked like, they used the same, I mean, they had like different value cutoffs where, you know, what's a small purchase, and I think the federal government, the idea of what's a small purchase is actually pretty large. But I guess if you're used to buying aircraft carriers, then, everything looks small. But it looked like, the same methods and, basically the same documentation, but, you know, maybe some differences, but, and that's why I think anyway, if they, you know, I mean, and there's some other, I mean, under state law, there's some other, I mean, like there's the build, operate, transfer that's a little different than, I mean, but I think the, you know, the basic, I mean, the intent is like to figure out like, you know, to make available, what are the documents that are used to communicate requirements to the potential suppliers? What prices and other information went into making the decision? Who was chosen, and if it wasn't the low price, I mean, there are good reasons for that, so just, you know, what were they? And then the contract, if it was a, you know, transaction involving a contract, then a copy of the contract, so. Yeah, I think, would this be helpful if like, this has some information, draft something in the form of a memo, say for you to look at, and you figure out what else, and I'm comfortable whether it comes from the commissioner, it comes from the city attorney's office, whatever you think would be best. And maybe we can work together on that to communicate with them, you know, what they need to get together and where they need to send it. And we'll loop Belinda in on that, make sure. We've had other stuff to do, and I've basically been wanting to make sure, like, you know what you're gonna do with this when it comes in before we start having somebody turn fire hose of documents at you. So any comments, questions on? Do you have any questions about,
No, and I was reviewing it before the meeting this evening, just double checking reviewing the emails, because so many messages have been going back.
Yeah.
and forth. Sounds like we need to add another section, but nothing complicated,
okay,
nothing that complicated, you just tell us what you want us to do. what you want
Okay.
us to Display it and we'll do it.
okay. Yeah, I got an email from, Lacey today. Oh, it mentioned, just another example of some of the, Lacey put together a letterhead for us, so like the next time, so the next time we have, notices to go out, it'll actually be a letterhead. Now, it went out in the city clerk's office envelope, but I think Lacey did get some contact, somebody like, what is this? Because it was just kind of a plain, the notices were just kind of a plain
Well,
memo.
We had sent some things out in city clerk's letterhead, and, one of the recipients had discussed with me, and it didn't even occur to me, it's coming out of my office, we're just a pass-through. So I also recommended that we get you your own, envelope letter, like, so, and I'm not sure how this is being paid, but if I have to fund it through my office, I don't, but
Yeah.
these are things, I mean, if you're sending things out, they need to be
Yeah.
under
Makes
your name,
sense.
not my,
Okay.
not my
Yeah.
office.
Could I suggest something that would probably be like probably the cheapest way to handle the envelopes until, and that would be, do you have like plain envelopes or a sticker that would cover like the,
Or stamp.
well, I was thinking I don't know if you have any plain envelopes, but if you've just got the ones that have like, the city clerk's return address, there's just like some laser print labels of the size go over that, just say Muncie Ethics Commission and whatnot. I mean, it wouldn't have to be like fancy logo or anything like that,
Yes,
just,
plain envelopes too. And
Okay.
Then we have to send things out in the manila, and we can figure that out if you want it to be like
Okay.
like a sticker, if you want it to be a stamp.
I,
We can generate something so it actually comes from you and not me.
okay, well, we can do whatever, is the easiest to do, and, I mean, because like, we got small volumes, right? I mean, not like an office that sends out a lot of stuff, and we need to buy, 500 envelopes at a time. So I think maybe, a sticker, or something like that, but, anyway, I told Lacey I'd try and get a hold of y'all, come in later this week, and we can talk about how to organize the,
And this is just like a superficial thing. If we generate like some sort of, an address tag, ethics tag for postage, you want an emblem or something, like you looking at the city emblem here? We can discuss it later.
yeah,
It's
we
not-
can,
it's minor, it's just that these are,
Yeah.
like, if we create something that we can use consistently, then we have it.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds good. We can, I'll get with you and Lacey on that. Okay, so I'll draft something and let you take a turn at it and see, if it communicates everything needs to be communicated, and, we'll start getting this information up, and I'll get with you and Lacey, because we've got some stuff we can start making available on there even, before that, so,
In the office currently, she and I both have the access to the uploads. I
okay,
don't have any, I might have another person across the street later.
okay,
So if you just attach both of us, one of us can do.
okay, sounds good. Anything else? Okay, I'll just mention, our next meeting will be July 9th at 6 PM. And we'll have, for old business on that one, we'll take up this electronic meeting policy, and we'll get an update, we'll give you an update where we're at on the transparency portal, and see if anything else comes in between now and then, but I think we're about to get our policies in place, I think, so.
Yeah, good work on that, you guys.
Oh, All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So be it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
Anybody opposed?